I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate. Niggas don't know what to think. Thought I get money, you change. What you thought we was the same? Still stay away from them clones. Niggas better leave me alone. Talking about niggas as though you run with niggas who don't know you. Whoa, I made that zagging when city to city. You niggas not hot in your state. If it was money to get a hit Henny, we get it and never complain. Same go for the gang, and we split it up all the same. I can't really eat, let's stay straight, cause we go way back in the day. My day ones from back in the day, they still hang around me today. You wanna come round us, you can't. I'm rolling up loud, it's great. But mama, she bad but complain, cause I'm too in love with my dreams. And I gotta get on the plane, and go get this money with Desi. I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang.
I get the bag with the gang, taking that Zach to the bank. Henny be all in my drink. You niggas is stupid, you think that should change? You not even hot in your gang. Ain't nothing even hot about your gang. You niggas be lying about same. Be posting them pictures of guns for the fame. Niggas just look at me different now. Say that's your man, but he a clown. Don't fuck around with the fuck arounds. Little nigga, you should cut it out. Me and my niggas take different routes. Punch a bitch nigga all in his mouth. Hold up my nigga, we different now. I need a Robert, it's just my style. I get a check today, I spent it all tomorrow. I get a bitch today, she probably a foreign model. I get a check today, I spent it all tomorrow. I'm with my gang today, tomorrow never promise.
OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang.
Your attention, please. Please do not smoke in the terminal building. Smoking is only permitted in the specified smoking areas.
Zach.
Thank you.
OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate. Niggas don't know what to think. Thought I get money, you change. What you thought we was the same? Still stay away from them clones. Niggas better leave me alone. Talking about niggas as though you run with niggas who don't know you. Whoa, I made that zagging when city to city. You niggas not hot in your state. If it was money to get a hit Henny, we get it and never complain. Same go for the gang, and we split it up all the same. I can't really eat, let's stay straight, cause we go way back in the day. My day ones from back in the day, they still hang around me today. You wanna come round us, you can't. I'm rolling up loud, it's great. But mama, she bad but complain, cause I'm too in love with my dreams. And I gotta get on the plane, and go get this money with Desi. I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang.
I get the bag with the gang, taking that Zach to the bank. Henny be all in my drink. You niggas is stupid, you think that should change? You not even hot in your gang. Ain't nothing even hot about your gang. You niggas be lying about same. Be posting them pictures of guns for the fame. Niggas just look at me different now. Say that's your man, but he a clown. Don't fuck around with the fuck arounds. Little nigga, you should cut it out. Me and my niggas take different routes. Punch a bitch, nigga.
I think I'm cute. I know I'm sexy. I've got the look that drives the girls while I got the moves that really move them. I send chills up and down their spines. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I make them hot. I make them shiver. These get weak whenever I'm around. They see me walk. They hear me talk. I make them feel like their God ain't real. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. That eat your heart out, girl. Mic flip though. Hands off the merchandise. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. Welcome everybody to another edition of the Pocket Locker Podcast. I am your host with the most, all the way from the East Coast, and as always, folks, I am in airplane mode. We've got a great show lined up for you. Before we do, let's go ahead and get into our communion because we absolutely need to catch a vibe. We are on some serious shit today that is seriously fucked up, and it's Friday. And look, gang, I don't even know how we're going to be able to get into this. I'm probably not even going to be able to keep my composure today. It's going to be real fucked up. Let's go ahead and do this. Please raise your glasses and hold on to your asses. Through him, with him, in the unity of the flying man. All glory and honor is yours who flied for our sins forever and ever. You may drink. Oh, yeah. All right, and this one is our communion song. It comes to us courtesy of Foy Vance. It's called Where Everybody Knows Your Name. What? Oh, my screen's way wacky. Way wacky.
Dublin, and he's going to play us out. You're going to play what to finish us up?
Do you know what? I don't know the name of this song, actually, but I know the song, and so will you.
Oh, I look forward to this. Five Vans, take it away.
Making your way in the world today takes everything you got. Taking a break from all your worries sure would help a lot. Wouldn't you like to get away? Sometimes you wanna go where everybody knows your name, and they're always glad you came. You wanna be where you can see troubles are all the same. You wanna go where everybody knows your name. Well, all those nights when you got no lights and the check is in the mail, and your little angel on the countered by its tail. Your third fiancé didn't show. Well, sometimes you wanna go where everybody knows your name, and you're always glad they came. You wanna be where you can see troubles are all the same. You wanna go where everybody knows your name. Well, you get out of bed and the coffee's dead. The morning isn't looking bright. You shrink right off to Europe and he doesn't even write. Your girlfriend says she's not a girl.
Alright, UC Love was first.
Be glad there's one place in the world where everybody knows your name, and they're always glad you came. You wanna be where you can see troubles are all the same. You wanna go where everybody knows your name. You wanna be where you can see troubles are all the same. You wanna go where everybody knows your name.
Five Vans. Most common word coming in by text, boy, is goosebumps. Believe it or not, we've had that repeatedly across a whole series. If you want to see five.
All right, let me get this together here because you guys like to mess with these screens. Let's go ahead and do a shot at Jer's pull up while we do that. Catch a quick Friday vibe, y'all. They play it every time I hit it.
Getting that hair done Tuesday. Feet up, relaxing, sipping that Douce.
This was 2K.
Shit, I could hit you on my two-way, or I could try to make you my new babe. I laid the dick down. Who ordered expensive lobster and souffle?
That'll be me.
Had to pull up in that CP3.
Now do you love me like he
Chi-town to New Jersey, we gon' pull up. Hell yeah, I got the hook up. Anytime that you need me, we gon' pull up. Damn right, I got the hook up. And saying you gotta act brand new. Nah, I can't stand you. Had to bring you round just to show what the fam do. No texts, no calls, no reasons to be involved. Young John Wall taking what's give it and get it off. Come on.
What you doing, girl? Pull up on me. I got a lot of time living in the moment. Like in the city with the gas roll for you. Come get you and we been up corners. Just to stretch it out.
about me. No disrespect about city, so you know I'm about it. So you know I'm about it. I can tell you about it. Now let me tell you about it. Playing, no, I had to doubt it. Days I'm in the hood like what it is. I might just slide up on you like what up, bitch. Cause you know I like to play with you. Come spend the day with you, come kick it, seeing what it do. You feeling comfortable, I make the move. But now it's different though, I guess it's cool. You wasn't shy about my love, remember after school the days when I picked you up. So now you fucked around and changed, almost messed it up. See, I ain't changed, baby, trying to catch a plane with you. Came back around to show you that I'm made for you. And here you go with the same old song on your weekend shit. I might just wish I never met her like Call Tom is. But I ain't tripping no, stay up on the grind, we gon' get some dough. And you got that good ass brain, I had to let you know. I really wanna let you know. Tell me where you wanna go and what you wanna know.
Whoa, what you doing, girl? Pull up on me. I got a lot of time living in the moment, like in the city with the gas roll for you. And I come get you and we play them corners like no disrespect about me.
No disrespect about city, so you know I'm about it. So you know I'm about it.
I can tell you about it.
Now let me tell you.
When you playing, no, I had to doubt it. I love this fucking song. Let's go. What you doing, girl? Pull up on me. I got a lot of time living in the moment, like in the city with the gas roll for you. And I come get you and we play them corners like no disrespect about me. No disrespect about the city, so you know I'm about it. So you know I'm about it. I can tell you about it. Now let me tell you about it. You playing, no, I had to shout it. No, I had to doubt it. Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Where'd you...
All right, we're back, folks. So look, I don't even know what to tell y'all, man. Like, look, shit was crazy. Thanks, chat. Appreciate the love, man. Appreciate it. So basically, here's the deal, man. I've had a lot weighing on me lately, and I've been trying to express some of this. Also, I'm unmuting and gather. So, Lena, you can hear me. James, Carrie Ann, can y'all all hear me? Somebody hear me and gather?
We can hear you.
All right, great.
We can hear you.
So
I can hear you.
I've been dealing with this. Yeah, I can hear you. Thanks. I've been dealing with this a lot lately because, man, like, I feel like Christianity is the everyday wall between me and my family. You know, it's the best way I could describe it is every day there's this feeling with me that I would love to talk to my family, and that's what would make them so happy. And really, it's just a bunch of guilt. I've just been feeling guilty and ashamed for, like, not wanting to talk to my family. But I realized that I didn't want to talk to them because the only way to keep them comfortable was to not talk about atheism, or not talk about being an atheist, or not talk about the problems that I have with their religion. But it's like the main thing I'm dealing with personally on a day-to-day is like recovering from religion. And I think it's awful. I think it's horrible. Like, I even made the mistake admitting to my mom that this is where I disagree with many atheists. Like, a lot of you are comfortable sort of making your beds with Christianity and laying in it because you have to maintain those relationships with Christians. But I feel like that's just empowering abusers to continue their abuse because we don't want to call them out for being abusers and being uncomfortable, and I'm not with it. And it just, it was literally something that I felt like I was suffering from every day. Like the same way people in our community are going through different things in their personal lives, they're going through maybe different pains, but it felt like that was my, you know, burden to bear day in and day out. Is I'm secretly like the bad son, the bad grandson, because I don't want to talk to my family because they're like bread and butter Christian cult followers, and I can't stand it. And so I called so I could just tell my mom, like, do you even know, like, why I don't talk to you? And trying to explain to her that, you know, it's not okay. Like, and trying to say, like, it's not personal. It's not like you. It's not, I don't want to talk to you. It's that I can't accept the fact that you're Christians, that you still want to be a part of this label. And then she doesn't understand that, like, I made this whole big stand in my family because my grandparents got sick, and I more or less, you know, demanded that they stop, you know, participating in their church because it almost got them killed. And we've been supposedly trying to get them to retire now for like, fuck if I know, gotta be like 10, 15 years, some shit like that, some asinine length of time. But he just didn't do it. He just didn't do it. He just didn't. And instead, he decided to just preach from home. And my mom said she was not going to let her house turn into a church house, because I come from one of those families, as y'all can probably tell, where you just run a church out of your house. That's kind of just inherited the run a church from home gene. And it pissed me off because, you know, the plan was my mom was going to move from Ohio to New Jersey because she built this house for her and my grandparents to live in so she could take care of my grandparents. But then the deal was, like, they were supposed to stay at the church house where they were until they wrapped up their affairs at the church. That way they could move into the new house and not have to commute back and forth to the church, and, you know, allow the church to move on and kind of just close that chapter of our family's history. But instead, my grandfather basically refused to retire, and I guess his congregation doesn't want a new pastor. Like, what were they supposed to do? Kick him out? And so now he's just preaching or whatever from their bedroom, like in teleconferencing. And so it's like you went back on your word, and now the house is a church house. You're running a church out of your home. Now, for her, it's always the excuse, well, I just, somebody needs to take care of him, and I just came to honor my parents and make them comfortable and serve them and yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, you're making excuses for the inexcusable. And this is the problem. I can't talk about who I really am and what's going on in my life because I have to worry about fucking ministers being in earshot. And you know, like, I'm not going to play this game with you. Like, this is running a church out of your house. And I tried to explain how misogynistic the Bible clearly is, and how anti-queer the Bible clearly is, and how you could take all that and it's clearly even more bigoted and hateful against non-believers. And I'm sick of people not seeing this. I'm sick of Christians telling, they're doing the same shit with us that they try to do with the LGBTQ community. Hate the sin, not the sinner. Oh, this is really love. Really, they love us. You don't. And my mom tried to tell me, I was like, no, you don't. She literally tried to tell me, oh, I don't know why we have to have this problem. I love it. It's like, no, you're not. You're doing the fucking Christian thing where you don't listen to me when I'm telling you that is not how you love me. Love you, gotta go. Sorry, cult meeting. We got to talk about atheists burning in hell. See you later. Like, I don't care that you paper over your religion to make yourself comfortable. I'm not going to do it. That religion is bigoted against non-believers. And I can't help being a non-believer, just like I can't help being black, because I can't change the fact that God isn't real. So to me, being a non-believer is just as immutable as being black, as being bipolar, as being 5'10", as having incredibly dark brown hair. Yes, my hair is brown. It's not black. It's just really fucking dark. But it's like I can't change that shit. I can't just fucking pretend God exists. And I certainly can't pretend that the God of the Bible exists and that motherfucker is worthy of praise. That motherfucker is a monster. And I'm severely disappointed in myself that I did not realize this as a Christian, but I don't understand why all the Christians in my life like refuse to be honest about this. Lena, can you still hear me and gather? Because I don't know what's going on. Like, all of a sudden, everybody's gone and gather. So I'm under the impression. Oh, Lena, are you still there? Yeah, I don't think they can hear me. All right. Yeah, Lena couldn't hear me. Came here. All right. Thanks, Carrie Ann. Maybe I had to reset. Lena, can you hear me? Yeah, something's going on in Gather where people can't hear me. Yeah, I don't know. All right, I guess we'll get that figured out. But yeah, I don't even know, man. It was crazy, like, and I tried to explain that this is an abusive relationship, that this is inherently an abusive relationship when, hang on a sec. Let me see if I can figure out what the hell's going on in Gather. I don't know why people can't hear me. I'm trying to, everybody came over to the, all right, it looks like it's showing audio right now. Check. Lena, can you hear me in Gather? Yeah, and I don't have anybody here to let me know if it's...
I can hear you.
Oh, all right, it got fixed. Good. All right, thank you so much. Yeah, everybody dipped because they couldn't hear me. Thanks for staying here. Appreciate it.
Of course.
So yeah, I'm super pissed about this whole thing, Lena, and we'll have a whole conversation. But what are your initial thoughts? I'll share more details. I'm gonna get in mode real quick so I could.
Jay, I'm at the same place you're at with my mom, so I don't know if that means I have the right ideas about it. I feel the same way, and that's more or less why I stopped talking to my family. But it's to each their own, and it
I felt like I needed to get it off my
I don't
chest.
know.
Right? Like,
I'm sorry.
I have
I'm
this
not a therapist.
thing. I'm like addicted to the truth, and I have this thing. Uncle Bobby's like, I willed the truth like a fucking sledgehammer. I never know if people know until you say it to them, so that you know that you've said it to them. So now they don't have the excuse because they've heard it from you. And I felt like it was kind of my fault because I let all this distance come into the relationship, and I expressed my dissatisfaction with the religion and how unhappy I was, but I never came out and said, and this is why I don't call you. This is why we don't talk. And like I said, I made the mistake of acknowledging that I feel more strongly about it than other atheists, because she just used that against me. Like, oh, I'm glad to hear there are more reasonable atheists in the world. Like, oh, I'm glad to hear that there are other atheists who can have people in their life who disagree with them and think differently and all this shit. And I was like, and so I had to try to clarify that they're able to do that because they're accepting marginalization in their own lives in a way that I won't do. That they're doing that because they've accepted being in inherently abusive relationships where they're not allowed to talk about themselves and they're not allowed to live their truths, only so that the people who are marginalized them can live theirs. And James,
I don't.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, keep going.
No, I just got to acknowledge that James kind of gave me some language. That's how me and my dad talk about it when I deal with the problem, and I need to deal with something. I'll call my dad and I'll say I need some language to, deal with this or that issue, and he'll kind of say, you could put it this way, you could put it that way, But James, you were saying, like, when you are in an unequal relationship, you're inherently in an abusive one. Right. Because, you're always going to have to accept the consequences, essentially, of not being the equal of this other person. And there's really no way for that to play out in a way that isn't ultimately going to be harmful for you.
Right.
You can't take a back seat in your own life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I tried to explain that. Like, growing up, like, it's like you don't have to take what I'm saying seriously. Like, you don't have to listen to me. Like, you just get to hang up and go back to the life you were living as though I never even said these things to you. And she goes, well, isn't that what you're going to do? I was like, no, absolutely not. Because the difference is I lived that way. You forced me to listen to and follow Jesus and believe and give my money to it. And I did those things and I took it serious. I've been on both sides of the fence and you have not. And it was okay for you to drag me out of bed and force me to go to church and force me to do all these things. But now I'm telling you that none of that's real and you don't even care. Like, you don't even have to look into it. I said, and she kept saying over and over again, do you want me to be a Christian? Do you want me to stop being a Christian? Do you think I should stop? And I was like, yes. And she kept, well, I don't understand what we have to do to move forward in this relationship. Why won't you just give me something concrete? I keep telling you over and over again the concrete thing you need to do. And I even explained, like, I was like, look, if you worshiped at the cult of sip and paint, I would tell you, I don't worship at the cult of sip and paint. I don't really think there's anything magical or supernatural about sip and paint, but I'm happy you find hope, meaning, and purpose in it. I'd be happy to sip and paint with you when I see you. Why? Because there's nothing in the official documentation of the cult and sip and paint that says women aren't equal, that says it's an abomination for man to lie with man, that says atheists, deserve hell and eternal torment. Like, that's not in there. But you demand that I ignore that it's in there so that you can keep being comfortable with it. And I kept saying, why do you want to believe this? Why do you want to identify this? I literally said, you're doing it to yourself. You choose to wear this label that comes with all this association, and it's not even true. And there was just nothing. It gives me hope and purpose, and then literally tried to fucking mock me with this bullshit. Oh, so what? So what now? What? Just what? Life just happens. Whatever happens just happens. And what? You don't have purpose? What? There's no higher power? And then wouldn't even let me answer. Had to argue with her for 20 fucking minutes. Let me answer the goddamn question. Because as soon as I started to say, you've been convinced that you get hope, meaning, and purpose from something without them demonstrating to you that the source of that hope, meaning, and purpose is even a real thing, and then you scoff at other people like, we don't have it. You get the same hope, meaning, and purpose from the same place I do. Activities, friends, family, trying to do meaningful work, hobbies. We had to fight for 20 fucking minutes for her to listen to me for 3 fucking minutes to answer that goddamn question. And the bitch set a fucking timer and cut me off. Wow. She'd always say she doesn't want to debate. She turns into fuckface Frank Turek as soon as you mention Jesus. Just an abusive liar whose words mean nothing. Who clearly... The all of that bullshit about taking the faith seriously and it was all a fucking lie to them. They don't give a shit. They don't give a shit. And today, something hit me. I started this journey with my family because I realized something that bothered me that I didn't want to accept. And that is, in my family, Jesus is more important than Jason. And nobody should accept a situation in which an imaginary character is more important than you are to your loved ones.
And here we have the ugliness of religious faith.
Yep. And today was a day I accepted that was not a product of my imagination. Today I accepted that Jesus is more important than Jason, is the hard, cold facts of reality, always had been, and I've been trained in that way from the beginning, and that it wasn't just some fanciful thought I had pondering on my family. It was the cold, hard truth. Jesus is more important than Jason, and my family at this point is 2 + 2 = 4.
In a tragic way, she earns the title of a real Christian.
In a very, very tragic way. In a very, very tragic way. And I realized that this is where so many people in our community are at. Now, a lot of y'all are like I was, or like I've been, where you've never gone there with your family. So you really don't know what would happen. And I finally had to admit to myself today that my mom is a grossly inadequate person when it comes to this. That she's the problem. Christians like her are the problem. It's the no hate quite like Christian love, the gaslighting, the asking questions to challenge me and then cutting me off to make sure I don't actually get the answers out because she knows the answers would make her faith look stupid. the forcing herself to listen and then just listen, let it all go in one ear, right out the other. It was absolutely toxic and abusive.
Mm-hmm.
And I told her, you're acting like a child. You're absolutely like a child.
What'd she say to that?
It's just, oh, now you're being disrespectful. Okay.
Disrespectful. Otherwise, she's entitled to it.
Yeah.
And it's your place not to question it.
Exactly. And it's just, and so I realized. Go ahead, Lena.
I was gonna say you could just strip the whole thing from the atheist context, from the religious context. I mean, this story is just one of growing up and of being seen as an adult by your parents.
Yeah. The funny thing is, in the movies, they make this sound like that's what happens when you're 16. I'm 36.
Yeah.
It's crazy, you know.
Sure.
But yeah, it's a fantastic point, Lena. Yeah, it's just and then I realized that this is a burden that I need to let go of. I can't hold myself responsible for their emotional development that I don't control. And if they're really this deeply committed to this, they're not going to understand because they don't want to understand. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. It didn't matter. It didn't matter how explicitly I stated it. You know, I even asked how could you, if I signed up for a club that said black women aren't good to go, how are you supposed to be okay? Oh, I don't want to have this conversation anymore. It's just it's just something wrong with them, dude. It was so fucked up that I'm just realizing this is where a lot of people are, and this is where I have to get to. Like, I have to realize I can't force them to mature. They're not going to. At this point, it's beyond a reasonable doubt. Right? What I was doing is pissing in the wind, praying for a miracle. Ironically. And they're not going to be safe people for me because this demonstrates just how much Jesus is more important than Jason. They're never going to be the mature support system, secular support system that I need in my life. I can't surround myself with people who think Jesus is the answer to my problems. I just can't. It's the same thing that happened with court. Sent me to some court-appointed therapy place. It was all on that Jesus bullshit. Literally threatened to call the cops. I walked out literally not knowing if there was even an alternative. But I was like willing to face the judge again and be like, you could throw me back in jail for not complying, but I'm just trying to tell you, if you want me to get help, you can't send me somewhere that says that something I don't believe is the only chance I have at getting help. So I literally walked the fuck out like, I don't know what my PO is going to say, but these people can't help me. And that's how serious it is for some of us to live in our truth. We just recognize it. We're like, I can't sit here. Like, what is the point of me sitting here? You cannot help me if you're like, yeah, so you're here because you fucked up. Yeah, and you're potentially in a lot of trouble. Yeah. And if you fuck up again, guess what? You're going to be in even more trouble because this is the first time you fucked up, so you get this little program. But if you fuck up again, guess what? You're not going to get a program to help you out. So look, if you don't get on your knees and turn your load over chest, you're just always going to be a fuck up. You're like, yeah, I got to go.
Right.
Now, fortunately, you know, my PO was like down to go above and beyond, right? So she was like, look, I looked a little further out. If you're willing to drive a little further, go to the county. But that's how I found cognitive behavioral therapy. But that was one of the perfect, most reality rubber meets the road differences. is one group gets prayer and thoughts and prayers and discipline yourself and trust in the Lord, and the other group actually gets scientifically based help that actually helps. And it's the same thing in my life. I can't have these people who give it over to Christ as my support system because I literally don't trust Christ enough to lean on them knowing they're leaning on him. Just don't. There's no anchor or backbone to having them as my support system because they're not even living in the same reality. At least my atheist friends know we're all we got. We know that our human support system is the only support system we can count on. We know prayer and divine favor is not going to put food on the table or comfort us in our sickness or any of that shit. And so I'm realizing that I've been trying to make my peace with feeling this need to get them to understand where I'm at so that we can move forward in our relationship. And now I'm realizing I have to hit the reset button and start all over again. And now I have to get comfortable with the idea that I just don't want to be in a relationship with them anymore. And I've got to start this process now from today of figuring out what my life looks like without that part of my family in it. And it's a big shock to my support system and future and the way I see myself and what my role in the family is and how it's all going to play out. It's a big deal, but
yeah.
I mean, I had a meeting afterwards and I was just like, I just can't. Yeah, it just didn't. It was just like, I'll see you guys next week. Like,
well, welcome to the black sheep table.
Yeah, seriously, welcome to the black sheep table. But you know what? I have been the black sheep for a long time. You know, I was just trying to find a way to undo it, but I don't think there is a way.
So, I mean, I think it's something where you can hang up the phone, right? And if she's the one calling, I think you can be there, you know, just as a nicety, but to basically explain that the only way forward is for meaningful change. And so,
yeah, I mean,
like the ball's in her side of the court, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I highly doubt I'll hear from her other than notifying me when something bad happens. Either somebody gets really sick in the family or somebody dies or...
and then she'll use it to guilt trip you.
Yeah, or, you know, that type of thing. Maybe she'll try to call me on holidays or something, but she doesn't put a lot of effort into reaching out to me now. That's always been part of my mom's whole fucking power trip is she doesn't really work that hard to reach out to me or meet me on my terms, but then it's like I'm the bad son for not wanting to be the type of son to call her every day and talk all the time. And again, it's my fault that we're not close, even though... And I even said to her, I said, look, I know you came of age in a different time, and that the solution for you was you don't talk about certain things. You put them to the side because they're sources of conflict, and you don't talk about them so that people can just get along. And I said, I get that, but we're not doing that anymore. And we don't do that anymore because it only benefited the people in the position of power. It only benefited the status quo. And those of us that were suffering just had to continue to suffer in silence. And we're not doing that anymore because it's not okay. It doesn't make the situation better. And I said, now we use the same language of coming out because, you know, that's what the experience seems to be on a par with, you know, our queer fam that can just, you know, they have to make choices about, do they come out, do they let people know, but when they live their truth, of course. And I was like, and you can't tell someone who comes out to you, oh, I accept that you came out to me, just please don't talk about being a homosexual anymore. And I said, that's what you're doing to me. I'm your gay son who just came out to you, and you're telling me that's great, just don't ever talk about it. I said, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I said, you should not want to be that type of parent.
Yeah, it makes me think of why they don't want to accept evolution, which is that their worldview just can't change. The book's been written, and there's no progress to be made. Not until Jesus comes back, at least. From our perspective, it's all downhill.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hang on one sec. Derek Bennett just sent me a text where there's some conference thingamajigger going on coming up here soon virtually, and I think they're going to try to ask me to participate in this, so let's stay on top of that. I'll let you guys know as soon as I get more details.
Yeah, that sounds like fun.
Yeah, but yeah, I this is really tough for me because it feels like, I don't know. It feels like once I started to have these conversations, it's kind of like the cat was out of the bag. Because when you're suffering in silence, at least you haven't put it on the table in front of your support system. So you don't know what they know, but once you actually tell them and you put it before them, I said the story too, like what more, what I have to do? Like, if your son, who you respect as a scholar and all this, tells you, you know, that your religion isn't true and it's a form of bigotry and all that, I said, to me, that at least ought to obligate you to look into it. And if the things I said, if it were me and my child said that I was part of a group that was bigoted against my child, I would, number one, if that were genuinely new information to me, I would try to find out if my child was in fact correct about that group. And if my child was correct about that group, my last day as a member of that group would be yesterday. And I don't understand how they wiggle and dance around any other acceptable response. It's one of the reasons I genuinely despise Rebecca and Peter W. Because they are those ignorant-ass Christian parents with way more exposure and sophistication in these issues than my mom. And every time I see them is a reminder of how just being one of these people's child isn't enough reason for them to quit this bullshit.
Yeah.
And then they act like it's not a form of bigotry, James. Like it's really sad that I've come up with this esoteric and quite frankly extremist interpretation of the Bible, right? Where the Bible hates women and it hates gays and it hates non-believers and it's pro-slavery and pro-genocide, and they just don't understand why we seem to interpret the Bible this way.
Well, it's weird because they interpret the Bible that way too, but then they just deny it. It's like they're.
This is what I'm telling you. Go ahead, James. I need to hit this, man.
Stop calling genocide genocide. Stop calling hate hate. It makes us uncomfortable. So, when I look at this in terms of not just like the wider social phenomenon, but the way that it affects people's lives, the reason why these are difficult conversations to have with these people is because they are married to the comfort that the narrative brings them. It is pure selfishness. And this is the ugliness of religious faith, is that it is at its core incredibly selfish, and to the point that it's destructive, because there is an allowance for a certain amount of selfishness in our lives in the real world. The Buddhists say, and rightly so, that if your compassion does not include a fair amount for yourself, an equitable amount of compassion for yourself, then your compassion is incomplete. So basically, some degree of selfishness is wise and is healthy, right? But they're out of balance. They've taken selfishness to such an extreme that they've lost the ability to give a fuck about the people that are supposed to be the most important people in their lives. And it reminds me of the saying, please quit sending your love up to heaven. If anybody's up there, they've already got enough of it. We need more love down here. Quit exporting it when we need it here, right? And it's just that same kind of thing where they don't understand that they're not being loving. They don't understand that they're not being kind, they're not being fair, they're not being reasonable, because their whole way of looking at the world is crouched in this complex, overarching narrative that they're sitting right in the middle of. And all they can see is from that vantage point. And so just the same way that we look around and we see certain things, like we see molesters, for example, we don't call it a bigotry to have a problem with people that molest people, right? Because we recognize molesting people as a wrong thing. Well, their brain took that same phenomenon, which normally makes sense. You see a badly behaved person, or you see a badly behaved category of behavior, and you say that's bad, right? That's reasonable. But they take that mechanism and they substitute things that are bad for things that are not bad. And so when they look at LGBT and trans and atheists and all these other demographics, and they feel like they're not being hateful because in their mind, the thing that they're denigrating is bad. It is wrong. It is a problem. And so they feel like if you're allowed to look at axe murderers, just to pick a different example, if you're allowed to look at axe murderers individually or as a demographic and say, I feel like I'm morally superior to axe murderers, I feel like axe murderers shouldn't be a thing, right? And they feel like, hey, if you can say that, then I should be able to say the same thing about atheists and about LGBT and all this other stuff. And the way that they justify that is that they've been sold this PragerU type narrative where people who live differently and feel differently and identify and relate and navigate the world differently than they do are wrong. That they are not worse than that we are somehow responsible for the decay of society. That somehow, if we are allowed to run unchecked to where atheism becomes prevalent and rational skepticism and people that feel free to identify sexually consistent with their own mental paradigm, that somehow it will destroy institutions like family and government and just social norms, because they've reasoned that the reason so many people behave well in society is because they all believe the same basic idea about a God, And so they think that the reason people aren't running around rampantly, killing and doing other horrible things to everybody is because everybody's, or at least the majority, are cowering in fear at the idea that daddy will see it. Daddy will notice that you're running around axe murdering everybody and doing this other horrible stuff. And so they think that leash, that disciplinary whip from an authoritarian parent who is always watchful, always vigilant, and prone to violence, that they will step in if you get too out of hand, right? Individually and as a society, they will step in. And so they feel like that narrative is real to them. And so they look around and they think, well, what's going to happen when everybody's free to decide for themselves what's reasonable and what's not reasonable, what's moral and what's not moral, behaviorally and ideologically. But they don't understand psychology. They don't understand the real reasons that people behave well. They don't understand sociology. They don't understand the real reasons people behave well in groups. And this is just part of the problem, is that they are scientifically illiterate. This is why science and scientific education is directly tied to the welfare of society and its ability to progress socially and sociologically. And in order to have a more just, a more fair, a more equitable, a healthier society, we need scientifically literate citizens. As that happens, we have a more and more stable society, and then people are less prone to be in panic mode. And the less people are in panic mode, the less selfish they tend to be, and the more relaxed they tend to be, and the more reasonable they become in this environment. Partly because there's a better education, and partly because their social needs are being met, partly because they're not constantly walking around this constant cloud of fear about, this paranoia about everybody else. And this is the reason why atheism flourishes under stable governments. It's been statistically proven across the world. This is not a new experiment. This has been running for centuries. The more secular a society is, the more atheism flourishes, because people will relax out of their panic mode and start to think reasonably and pro-socially.
Yeah. And I don't think that's going to be my story, man. Like, that's crazy.
Well, there's something underpinning it with your mom. There is something underneath the narrative. There's emotions driving her dedication to the narrative. If you could figure out what those now, this is assuming that your mom doesn't have like a personality disorder or something, because that changes the game entirely.
Right.
If your mom doesn't have a personality disorder, then there are resolvable factors. You just have to figure out what they are and approach the problem laterally instead of.
I think that
directly.
that was my deal. I used to think about this as ironically. That was the direction I thought this would have to go. But the reason I don't think it works is because, to me, that means going through my grandparents. Because to me, that's really what the issue is. She still has that childlike fear of disappointing them. To me, this is where she gets all this from. But the irony is, they're all keeping each other in it. Like, she's the person who losing the faith would have the biggest impact on them and have them do some sincere introspection and questioning, but she won't do it. And, there's no way, right? My grandfather's just, their whole life is pastoring. That's who he is. He can't quit it. He can't even retire from it. He can't. I love teaching. I love being a professor. But trust me, when they tell you, Jay, look, you get a paycheck, but you don't got to come to work no more.
Right.
Out.
Facts.
Right. So, it's like, and I felt a couple things that were profound. Number one, I started to feel like waiting for them to die are the words that come to mind, y'all. I know that sounds terrible. And it's not quite it's not wishing it or wanting it to, but it feels like you've come to the end of your road with someone where the relationship isn't growing, it's just reached its final state. And in its
Yeah, that
final
doesn't mean they have to die.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
just means
They are elderly,
it just
and
means
it's
that
probably close to the end of the
right.
you know.
And it feels like there was this desperate sort of I have to get right with them or else they're gone to time sort of thing. And now it's like they're just kind of gone. It's like the term of maintenance love comes to mind. So I read this great book called Sperm Wars. People should check it out. But it breaks down, how there's a lot of different types of sex, right? And sometimes you end up in a relationship where, there's a certain amount of sex that happens in some relationships just to maintain the relationship, right? And it's a different type of sex than, the first few nights of passion, right? Or different type of sex than you have if you're, having an affair or something like that. But yeah, there became this way in which it was like, oh, these relationships are just being maintained. They're not growing. They're not developing. I'm growing and developing as a person, but my relationship with these people isn't reflecting that growth. They still relate to me as though I'm who I was when I was a child, even though, and so to me, they're ignoring all of that. And so there becomes a certain rigidity to that, so that you're just like, oh, this relationship isn't growing anymore. We're just waiting for it to be over at this point. Like this, we just stay in this state till it's done. I get it.
Right. So this is a two-sided paradox. The child spends their life since birth in this paradigm where they can't see themselves outside the context of that relationship paradigm. And so the parent is almost cemented in the mind as an authority over them, as having certain entitlements and privileges to the role. And a lot of times the parent will have will have the same idea that they are entitled and privileged and authority in the room every time that you're in the room with them, just by default. Now, the child outgrows that paradigm by learning to experience themselves outside of that environment. They go out into the world and they have different experiences with different people who aren't making the same assumptions or building from the same framework. And it allows you to build confidence and to start owning your own voice as you discover it, and to own your own space as you discover it and you create it. And so as that happens, and it's transformative, even in ways that you don't notice. You go back into the old environment with those people, and you're no longer identifying as the same person. You are no longer granting the assumption of their superiority in terms of entitlements and privileges and power and authority, but they haven't been out there experiencing the world in a way that's transformative for them. And so they aren't coming back into your relationship with the ability to see things differently. It's because they're stuck in a very small bubble of repeating environment that
and
same thing. So
I even kind of spoke to that a little bit because I feel like they're in a state where they're trying to ride out the end phase or whatever, and I'm like, I'm literally just finished school 2 years ago. I'm trying to figure out now what the rest of my life looks like. I'm in no position to phone it in at all. Yeah, just want to say that.
And that makes perfect sense to me. So, I mean, they have you at a disadvantage, but it doesn't have to be that way, right? Because, and you've said this before, like, you don't want the only solution that you're afforded is to make them less important. You don't want to have to be the way that you almost, and I don't think you use this analogy exactly, but I think of it as like, chewing, like a raccoon or something chewing its foot off to escape a bear trap, right? Like you can't stay stuck there. You don't want to take the loss, right? You don't want to go through that pain, but you can't stay stuck there either.
Right.
And I totally understand the frustration with that.
Yeah, that's my family, dude. Like, and it's because of the same rigidity I'm speaking to now. It's going to be like that forever unless something drastic changes, right? They're not going to wake up one day and go, oh, we should really relax on this whole G. They're just not. So it is really tough. And I want to speak to something that I think Non-Believer said in the chat, that, like, you know, their mother is accepting and sort of non-judgmental and, you know, doesn't always agree, but lets them be themselves. That's kind of what fucked me and my mom up. Because my mom is largely that way. And the thing that I think would probably surprise most people is, other than this, my mom hasn't really ever given me much reason to be upset with her. And even in this, she hasn't failed the test of, like, right? She still accepts me and loves me and wants me to come home and wants me to talk to her all the time. And, you know, her line, I would say, is that she doesn't get why this has to be a source of division between us. She just wants us. She wants us to be okay, and she doesn't understand why we have to not get along because of this, right? So I just want to be clear about that. She hasn't failed that sort of basic humanity test of loving your child regardless of who they are in her mind, right? The issue is, to me, especially given how sophisticated and educated she is as a person, right? Mom's like a C-suite executive, Fortune 500 company type of corporate sharp. She's not an idiot, right? She's got a master's degree and a degree in psychology. So she's failed that next step that I need. And that's what I was trying to explain to her today. Like, I need people in my life who can understand what's important to me and who I am. And it's their inability to be honest about what Christianity really is and what its message really is, and how that then affects people who are marginalized by their faith. And that's what she failed to do. And I try to even make that point that, like, this isn't, it's more important, right? It's doctrinal. It's like, it's more important than, you know, us disagreeing about something or me not believing your stuff. It's that this is a group that is bigoted against people like me. Now, really, it's bigoted against a whole list of people.
Just a cafeteria of bigotry.
Just a, yeah, seriously. And that's what drives me crazy, is that, to your point, James, they're so addicted to the comfort of the special sauce that they can't see, they can't deal with the realities of its impact on you. That's what, and it's and then they demand that you just ignore it. Don't just ignore it. Ignore your pain. Don't shut that part of your brain off, and just be cool with it when they're around, because their brand, their message is Jesus' love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's their narrative, but it's basically an anti-Semite telling someone who's Jewish that, but I do love you, because I'm being nice to you, right? I'm such a loving person that even though you're a Jew, I'm being nice to you, right? How much more loving could I
Yes.
be?
Yes. Yes. Oh, that is such a great way to put it. And that's how they see it too.
Yeah.
Right? You know, Christianity is good to go because I accept you even though the book tells me not to.
Right. It's the undeserved kindness thing. It's the offer of grace. She's extending grace to you that you may be this person who's lesser than her in some way, in fact, multiple ways, because you believe in the evolution thing too.
Right, right.
But at the same time, she's bestowing that undeserved kindness from a mother to a son, just like the Father in heaven just bestowed an undeserved kindness because here she's unworthy of a certain degree of respect or consideration, but he's granting it in terms of how he treats her anyways,
Right.
because look how great he is. She's granting it to you even though you don't deserve it anyways, because look how great she is.
Right.
And she thinks she's just continuing this tradition of what she thinks love is supposed to be.
Right, exactly.
Wow. Yep.
That's really
That sums it up nicely. Yep.
sums it up nicely, James. And yeah, I think that's it, man. That's kind of, that puts a period on it, right? And so the thing then is, what do you do about it? And for me, it's like you got to do the reconstruction thing from a safe distance, right? And that's weird because for me, that's almost like it's almost like there isn't a safe distance for me. Like it's just,
And that's why it's personal. I blocked my mom. I'll tell you that. So
Right. So
my other family members, if they want to tell me she's really trying to reach out to me, you know, then I'll find out. But other than that, I'm over it.
yeah, you just kind of get there. That's where I'm headed, man.
right. So when we have these formative experiences in our lives, the brain actually maps out that way with the way the neurons are connected and the way that they connect over to the emotional centers and the identity centers of our brain. And so as we outgrow those old ways of thinking and being and relating, the problem is that those neurons are still connected. Now their chemical connections, their physical connections slowly degrade over time from not being used. But if you end up in a situation like an environment, a social environment that you've been in before, then what happens is familiarity will happen, and then electricity will flow over those connections in the brain. And because now the neurons are being activated again, they begin to chemically bond again in a way that makes them more durable all over again. And so they begin to reassert themselves in the psyche as a relevant part of your perceptual paradigm of who you are and how you feel. And now you've got these two competing bundles of neurological wiring in the ways that they're connected to the brain. The new one that you've worked hard to build, that you've earned your autonomy, you've earned your self-respect and consideration and all these things. And at the same time, there's this old wiring left over that if you're in those same situations with those same people, is being reactivated, right? And those neurons are reconnecting. And so now that you've got this is why it's injuring. This is why it divides us within, even though we know who we are. This is why there's this growing voice inside of us that begins to doubt and begins to feel this pain of existential crisis almost. Like, hear me, stop telling me that I'm this lesser person, that I'm this subservient child in your world. Stop, right? Because that's not who I am. Does this make any sense?
Hey man,
This makes sense.
this makes sense. Thanks for the sub. Yeah, it really does. And I think that's kind of what I'm experiencing is, man, it feels similar to leaving a church, right? Is like, man, like I remember when my church first closed due to COVID. You know, I actually was like watching online for a while, even though obviously there was no need for me to play. because it's like everybody did it together, you know? And then I remember they first started doing some like really limited in-person stuff. Like they just had a couple people show up to like do a couple little songs or whatever, but then everybody else was like watching them. It was like, it's weird, but all right, go ahead. I'm not doing that, so fine. And then I remember when like he sent out like the worship pastor like sent out a video like, all right, gang, it's time for everybody to like get back to it and get ready to go back in person. And I remember that feeling like, because I always suspected that it was going to play out in some way that they were going to be itching to go back in a way I wasn't comfortable with, right?
Yeah.
And so that day was like, well, today's the day. And then I really felt that like, oh, they're just going back to business as usual. And now I'm just going to be totally out of step with the group, right? And I've had very limited contact since then, you know, because you feel, I don't know, just ostracized, just isolated from everybody else because, you know, you're not doing.
I'm sorry, Jay.
Yeah, it's. I appreciate that.
For a lot of people, it's harder than losing family because you're losing your body in Christ. You're losing.
Right.
And the community, so it's layers of identity and attachment.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, I was related to Nitty in that regard because I know I miss just being around my friends like that. But yeah, this feels like that similarly because it just feels like the group identity is so strong. They're gonna do what they got to do, and I don't know. My mom's gonna hold the line to be a Christian. Here's the other thing. Like, there's a couple things here. So one that I touched on was kind of feeling the distance and stuff, but something it came up on your stream somehow, James. And it was some conversation about love. And it really hit me like a ton of bricks.
Recently?
Yeah, recently, man. Just in the last day or so, man. And what happened was whatever you said like made me start thinking, does my family really love me? And like, do I love my family? And it really crushed me because I realized that I didn't know either answer. That, of course, they would say they love me. And of course, I would say I love them. But it felt almost like compulsory. Like I have to say I love my dog because if I say I hate my dog, you're going to think I'm a monster. Now, fortunately, I have the greatest dog in the world because he's ridiculously easy to take care of. But no, like I really
like.
Go ahead.
Does he have a sister? Does he have a sister? I'm single. I want to say that, but I don't want people to take it literally, right? I'm just saying. Go ahead.
But it really hit me like I don't know if I love my family because they're the epitome of the religion poisons everything people. Like they're the people. And I feel like I have to love them in the sense of like, you know, like not being a sociopath or something. but I don't feel that like affection or desire to hang out. There's this coldness and there's this distance, right? Like we've all been in that place in romantic relationships where it's over, but you're still in the relationship, right? And there's this coldness, and and neither party would say that this is what love looks like, right? And that's kind of how I felt, right? Like I don't look forward to seeing them. I don't really look forward to talking to them. And it genuinely feels like they don't understand, accept, or celebrate who I really am. And it feels like they can't. So it almost felt like this perfunctory thing that just really bugged me. And then when today it hit me that there was really something there, because when my mom tried to like do the Christian, well, you know, I don't know why this is the thing with you because I love you. And I was like, no, don't say that to me. Because you're not listening to me. I'm trying to tell you this is not how you love me. This is not what love looks like. I keep trying to tell you I'm suffering and you're not getting like, and I realized that like I felt insulted. I was mad than the motherfucker that my mom tried to tell me she loved me today. With the shit I was trying to lay on her, how dare you fucking tell me this is fucking love? It's the whole fucking, what the fuck you think the point of this conversation is? And again, I realize she's obligated to say that she loves me. And I think in her mind, she genuinely believes that is true. But it's scary like a motherfucker. She can't realize how fun. How do you have a degree in psychology and you don't realize that we're in a fucked up ass situation when you're worshiping a book that is not even true and literally says people me like are all types of fucked up, and you don't seem to see the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Like I couldn't even accept it, James. Like I couldn't even. And that's where it's weird because that's like crazy. And you know, my family's always been a huge support system for me. It's part of my, you know, security in life of, you know, knowing I have people in my life that are always, you know, looking out for me, always gonna be there for me if I fall on hard times or whatever. And now I'm like, I don't know if we still have that type of obligation to one another as a matter of social functioning, but I'm definitely not feeling the relationship. Like it just feels like I need to just
maintain it till they die.
Yeah, and just live it out. Like I just can't. Because I don't even want to be bothered. Like.
Assuming that your mom has an otherwise healthy psychology, maybe that's a big assumption. I'm just going to grant it. You know, if your grandparents, if her parents weren't there in that home, so central to her daily life, being as religious as they are and reaffirming those old neurological connections of that relationship paradigm and the way she thinks, and then free from that. If she were to have regular outings with secular progressive, even if they were just progressive Christians, but better yet, just secular
people,
non-religious people, where religion just wasn't part of the discourse, where it was just healthy-minded people sharing healthy activities and healthy, unrelated to religion, conversations and stuff. Like her mind would begin to heal in that way. It would begin to change the way that it works because she's not getting that, because indoctrination isn't a one-time event. It is an ongoing process because the shape that Christianity pulls brains into is not our natural shape. And if you give that brain a chance to heal, it will. Right. And so she just needs to be away from them and have enough exposure and interaction with healthy-minded peers, and she will begin to soften up.
Yeah.
I do believe that.
And now that won't happen till they die.
That's very frustrating.
because she moved them in their house. James, it's a decision that I have never been good with. Number one, I felt like she made the decision like it felt like kind of COVID made her change her mind and think more seriously about losing her parents, right? But I felt like she had prepared her whole life to retire and go live somewhere warm where she could play golf.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like she should do exactly that. Like, you're good,
Right.
you're retired, you got your husband, you're still in, pretty good health and everything. Like, go tan, play golf, and make new friends and drink cocktails. I don't know what seems to be the problem.
Right.
She really was on that, like, honor your father and your mother tip, right? So she started to feel like, well, they're getting older. I don't know how much longer they're going to be around. Their health is declining. I should go back and, like, take care of them. And I was always like, ooh, that's a hard turn, right? That's a way different way to spend your retirement. Like, that's not even, ain't even fun anymore. You know what I mean? Like, that's not even like retirement, really. Like, you're just signing up for a new job as a caretaker, full-time caretaker. Like, and my grandparents aren't quite there yet either. Like, they don't really need that. Like, they're old. Shit happens to them, but they've got it. You know what I mean? Like, they're still kind of okay. And so I don't know. I never really liked it, but then it really hit me that, one, I think it's her own religious indoctrination. Like, she feels like she owes it to her parents, even though I don't think people really do, right? But I don't want to shame somebody for feeling that way. It's like, it's your life. If you want to spend your retirement taking care of your parents, then I'm certainly glad somebody's going to be taking care of them. I certainly think it's better for them, right? No doubt about it. So, fine. But then it felt like our relationship was going to change because I had started to get more comfortable with her as a non-believer, because my grandparents weren't really, like, around that much. So it's like, if I went to visit my mom, my grandparents weren't around, so it didn't really matter that me and my secular ass girlfriend came with me. Like, just, but then once that plan changed, I was like, well, this is going to be different because they're going to be around all the time. And then for a while it was gonna, like, and it really did change, because for a while me and my mom were, like, getting closer, or things was kind of going in the right direction. I wasn't trying to have out and out confrontations about it, but it was just heading in the right direction. And then they moved in a lot faster, after I don't know what happened, they got sick, and then, when she moved out there, I don't know, they just decided to move in sooner, and it bothered me because he hadn't finished his commitments at the church. So then all of a sudden it, like, wasn't really safe to just talk whenever we talked, because a lot of times they were, like, around. And then he didn't retire from the church, and so it all went terribly. And so now their house basically is a church house to me, and they don't understand that. It is the KKK analogy. I tried to use that, didn't fucking matter. But that's the other thing. So that's the thing I was kind of getting at about my family, is that I feel like there's a certain accountability that needs to happen there. I don't think it's enough for them to wrap their package up as Christian love, because, one, it's not. I just know it's not. and two, like, they're still in it. They still support it financially. They're still preaching. They're still leaders in the movement. Like, they're still active
Right.
participants. And I don't think they deserve to be forgiven for something they're not sorry for.
We love you too, Kata. And yeah, it's eh, but like Sal Willis says, right? We can make suggestions and we can appeal to various values and points, but there's just not much we can do in terms of getting them to do the thing they need to do. So there's a certain amount of peace that does come from accepting that we can't argue someone into a more reasonable behavior. We can't argue them into ethics. We can't argue them into changes of how to live their life. No matter what we appeal to, a lot points of logic, or points of emotion, or points of values and ideals. It doesn't matter if they're
Mm,
unfazed by these things. All you can do is say, well, you know where I stand on these issues, and you know why it matters to me,
mm,
and then just say, I'm just going to give you the space you need, and the space I need to heal from this, right? And as
mm,
time goes on, if our connection fades to the point where it becomes unimportant, that'll be on you. I have to let that happen. You have to sit there every new day and make that choice. Are you going to turn around and start making a proper investment into our relationship, or are you not? And I'm tired of trying to get you to want to make that investment
mm,
and to make the changes. So if you wake up tomorrow or a year from now or two and decide, you know what, I think I'd like to start growing towards my son instead of apart from him, grow together instead of apart. I'm here. I'll always be here, right? Like, I'm not disowning you,
right.
and I appreciate that you're not disowning me, but I need to heal from this, because your religion especially is traumatic, not just for me, but for billions of other people in this world. And everybody's dealing with that in their own way, but healing matters and peace matters, right? And I'm not trying to steal yours, but I am trying to protect mine.
Right.
And
Right.
just let them know where you stand, and then just give them that space. And every new day that they don't reach out and say, okay, I'm ready, is just another day where they're not ready, right? Because no matter if we're like it's a spouse that we live with, or if it's a parent that we just live near, or whatever, arguments repeat it. Once your arguments begin to repeat, what that tells you is that you're not on the path that you need to be on.
Mm,
It's not just that they're not on the path they need to be on, you're not on the path you need to be on. Because you're just locked into that cycle until you do something different. Because you can't control what they're going to do. The only thing
mm.
you can decide to do is something different.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that really hit me, like, that one, I was gonna have to accept that space, that two, that this isn't what love looks like, and I don't know if I'm in a loving relationship with my family anymore.
You'll know
Um,
with distance, and this is something that I often tell domestic, like husband and wives, who are trying to figure out if they need to get a divorce or if they need to do something serious. And I'm like, just take some space away from the situation, right? Get your own space, get your own healing. And when you're both ready to have a more productive dialogue, just be ready for it. And if it doesn't happen, then that time and that space will allow you to gain a certain amount of clarity, and you'll know what to do, right? You'll know
mm,
because you're far enough away from it that you can see it in a different perspective. And if the right thing to do is to come back together and begin to rebuild, then you'll know. And if that's not the right thing to do, then that's what you'll find out too.
mm. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Man, I don't know, James. I feel so like, I don't know. I feel like there's a clarity that I have to have into where it's like, I don't know. I feel very gaslit, right? Because I feel like, I don't know, like, it feels like Christians don't feel like they had to take any of this shit seriously. And then they make me feel like I'm crazy or something for noticing these problems with it.
Right.
And then it feels like, well, I don't know. They're just too committed to that to be safe to me. Like, that's what I realized today. I was just like, whoa, like, I don't know. I felt like we were never gonna happen land. Like, it's
Right.
it's
So
weird.
yeah, I mean, I think that Liz Allen. I don't know how long you've been in here, but we were talking about that before too, about how their idea of what love is really is different than what we think it is, and they're basing it on a biblical ideal, and we kind of laid that out step by step about the way that Bibles teach you to think about love, right, as an undeserved kindness amongst people who are not
Right.
worthy.
Right.
And that's the problem. We're not looking for charity. We're looking for people that'll actually see our value and make that investment in a healthy, equitable way. And if somebody's not ready to, then they're just not.
Yeah.
And then all we can do at that point, instead of rehaving the same arguments, is saying, okay, you know where I'm at about this. I'm going to take some space to heal, right? And you know where to find me, right? And we'll touch base periodically, like, again, not disowning each other or anything. This isn't a divorce, but I've got to get some space from this. I just got to, and let them decide when they're ready to have that discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, that's pretty much where we're at with it. Man, it was kind of a rough realization to come to, but I just need to move forward with my own life. Yeah, I don't know. And I feel like I'm even in a weird place with this community too sometimes, because I feel like this is where we're at with this community. And I almost feel like a sucker because my mom will like sound like a very untrained Christian, like that whole Rebecca sort of it's all apple pies and rainbows type of Jesus. But man, the way she was in this conversation, James, was 100% indistinguishable from an apologist.
Mm-hmm.
Indistinguishable.
Well, that relationship dynamic is narcissistic. Now, I'm not saying she's a narcissist.
Right.
I'm saying that that's the playbook that they're reading from, and that's what she was trained to think with. So, and I think it's probably true that in her mind, she loves you, right? In her
Right.
mind, she's the good parent, and she's confused, and she doesn't understand, and I don't necessarily, and she might be. There might be some gaslighting involved. I'm not saying there's no gaslighting.
Sure.
I just can't say one way or the other for sure. But that's the funny thing about gaslighting. A lot of times it comes down to whether or not the other person realizes that the thing that they're saying is bullshit, or whether they really believe the bullshit thing that they're saying. And at that point, we feel like we need an answer to that, but we kind of don't, because the end result's the same. They're not on the same page with us.
Right.
And they're not pursuing or investing in an equitable, healthy relationship dynamic with us, and they're not being receptive to our efforts to make it happen that way, to help us heal and grow together. And if they're not, then they're not. If you've made every appeal you can to reason and to family connection and investment and common values and ideas, and just on a personal level, if you've made every appeal you can and every argument you can, and none of it has worked, then you have to let go of that strategy, and you have to just give that space. And it might take longer than you want it to, but I think
Sure.
that there could be a future between you. I think that you would heal better not entangled with it than you would entangled with it.
Yeah. That's very likely to be the case. Lena, what did that process look like for you? And you
I
know,
had a few conversations with her that I felt were pretty shallow. Where, I mean, she dipped into the apologetics too, which was concerning. But like, there didn't seem to be any desire to actually sit down and have like she's not interested in philosophy. She's not a philosopher. Not engaging in philosophy
right?
when we had these conversations, and so it's just frustrating. I think that's kind of what I told her is like, I don't think you honestly care about this the way that I do. And I told her, like, I know that you say that you love me and you think that you love me, but you don't love me.
Right.
And so we're just, I mean, the reason why I blocked her is because it was just kind of her occasionally sending a quote unquote loving message, and it's just, I don't want
Lena,
that
are you
anymore.
typing too? Are you sorry? You're probably gaming.
Sorry. Yeah.
No worries. No worries. I know you're playing the game. No big deal. But yeah, that's incredibly hurtful and hard to deal with, right?
It is, especially when it's your mom.
Yeah, and that is kind of the issue. Like, it didn't. Yeah, it just. She literally just said she didn't see it that way, and I'm like, "Am I? Don't see what way? Like, am I wrong about what the Bible says? Or am I wrong that you're not a biblical like?" It just
To me,
yeah.
it felt like the conversations we needed to have had
Oh,
hadn't
goodness.
happened by that point, which just kind of spoke to the inherent dishonesty of it.
Yeah. And I think that's the part that's hard is I felt like my mom really just completely failed to
And my mom
be-
has her
go ahead,
to be
Jim.
what?
It just failed to be the person I've come to expect her to be, and I just realized like how she's never grown up in that regard.
So, I mean, my mom told me that she had a personal experience, and she told me about her miracle story, and basically just told me, I don't want to hear you tell me it's not what I think it is. And of course, it's not what she thinks it is, because
Sure.
it was my sister getting sick, and she prayed, and then my sister was got better, and I told her that's the odds of that being coincidence are very high, and you have no reason to expect that to be a miracle, and she didn't like any of that.
Right.
Because she had her personal feeling, and I can't deny what she felt. She could have had, under whatever stress she was feeling, and maybe she was, apparently it was in the middle of the night. She could have had a hallucinatory experience of some sort. Or maybe just an intense emotional experience.
Right.
That got interpreted through the religious paradigm. But in any case, when I finally pressed her on why do you believe all this stuff, she went to the Kalam cosmological argument. And I was like, what? Like that caught me off guard.
Yeah.
But it was frustrating because it's like she knew that I took an apologetics course. She knows that I'm like really into science and philosophy. And
Sure.
so, like, I feel like she's been dishonest my entire life when it comes to the creationist debate, when it comes to the liberal interpretation versus she's just like Rebecca. She hasn't told me what kind of Christianity to believe in, just believe in Jesus. And I've tried to piece out what her specific Christianity is, but to some extent it's like I don't want to find out because I know that she studies the Bible every day, and I don't see how someone can do that and not be a dishonest apologist to some extent.
I agree, and I think my mom's sitting on the same bullshit in terms of being like the type to read her women's devotional Bible every day, which I'm sure is just filled with apologetic horseshit. And I think the churches she's participated in are mostly sitting on some bullshit. Although I think when she moved to Ohio, she was forced to, or felt forced to go to like white churches. I think she had a problem with realizing there was probably a lot of right wingers and Trumpletons in her church, but I don't think she's ever challenged the sort of wider problematic social shit as a result of Christianity. And now she's more or less this like super cafeteria, just do Sunday morning church from home on the couch, read your devotional Bible. So whatever she's into now, it is probably on her whole own path. And I think she's probably been dishonest in a sense of how invested she is into this stuff and her unwillingness to talk about it. And she did, like today, she went to the whole, so what, should everything just happens? So it just happens, and there's no purpose? Where do you get your sense of hope, meaning, and purpose from? How do you, so what, there's no joy? Like all this stuff. And then literally would not let me answer because obviously my answers. And then she basically like was like, oh, I was trying to ask. It was like, well, no, you need to shut up and actually let me answer.
Well, because for the average Christian, apologetics is merely a defense tool. It's only to be brought out at the last, needed effort, and it's supposed to, in their mind, it's supposed to suffice as reasonable justification, mainly because they haven't dove into the philosophy of it all.
Mm-hmm. What's up, Nitty?
Yo, how you guys doing?
Hey, Nitty.
Yeah, I know
good to
Wayne
have
snuck
you.
in here too.
Hey, Wayne.
Hello.
A minute ago. But yeah, do y'all have anything to add about this?
It sounds like you got a lot, man.
Yeah.
You gotta take a breather,
Yeah.
My mom, last conversation I had with my family was fairly productive, but like, yeah, and I can definitely, I get what you're saying with the like, what about the what aboutness like happens where they just like throw the spaghetti of questions at you to see what'll stick you.
Yeah.
So
Just,
that
of course,
experience
none of
always
it.
sucks. Yeah.
Yeah. It's always hard talking to your parents about faith because on a certain level, if they are true believers, it's like if they admit that the thing that gives them strength or gave them faith over years of their life doesn't exist, it's like they're letting you down as well in their minds. I know that I've experienced that with my parents. I know my mom is an ordained Christian preacher. I don't know the official term, but I know that she was struggling on her journey for a while before she decided to I guess plant her flag in Christianity. But I know with her, it comes from like that's just where she gets her strength. It's not that she does. I'm not gonna say she don't care that it's true. It's just that's secondary to the other benefits that they get from Christianity, the community, you know what I mean, and just being able to go through shit. Because like up until honestly, like 2 or 3 years ago, my mom never did like she never saw like a shrink or a psychologist or anything like that. She just had Jesus, and so yeah, saying that pillar of your faith isn't there anymore. I mean, we all go through it in the deconstruction, but like it's hard to admit
really
that
tough.
it's hard to admit that to a stranger. I feel like it's even harder to admit that to your kids.
It is, but I appreciate your story, Wayne. The irony of this is, believe it or not, that was part of my motivation to come out to my family because I needed them to know, especially on the other side of the very fortunate education I've received, that they didn't need to carry that for me. Because I always felt like if part of the reason the faithful are carrying that cross is because you're watching looking for them to be the example of the godly parent, you know, I had to like let her know, like, don't carry your cross for me, because I don't need you to do that.
But her paradigm won't let her listen to you because you're the kid.
Yes. No, I'm just saying it's ironic because liberating her for that was part of my motivation, but you know, now it's you know, gone the other way. Yeah. Go ahead, Nitty. All right, you're good. So yeah. But yeah, it's just I think the just needing time away, because it's not that I can't talk to them. It's not like they won't talk to me. I don't want to do the gray rocking thing anymore. That's what was painful to me. It was painful to call and talk about the news, talk about the weather, talk about politics, talk about everything other than, you know, what I felt was like the elephant in the room. So I'm sure I could go back to that, but I'm pretty confident I won't, because that was the state that made me feel terrible to begin with. You know, I guess I've seen what us cooperating looks like. It looks exactly the same as growing up with this insufferable religion as the center of everything. Ironically, because that's the only form of respect they'll accept. So, yeah, it's all good. All right, gang, let's shoot this shit in the head so we can get and gather, have some fun. We'll probably head to the beach so that we're flags planted for overnight and we can just have some fun. Really want to thank everybody for tuning in and supporting the stream. Don't forget to check us out on Ko-Fi. We're looking for 15 people to get us going next week or so here, so that we can switch over to our premium gather. I want to thank those of you that have signed up or let me know that you intend to do so. And yeah, I really appreciate it. Glad everybody's taking that on. Big part of what I'll be doing with that, you know, as members only content, is talking more about my personal journey and where I'm really at with Christianity right now. So yeah, Nitty's thinking about doing a set. Yeah, man, let's Nitty, let's head out to the AR built like a club over there at the beach, so we'll head to there and gather. If you head to the Tiki Bar, there's a hole in the Tiki Bar. That's where we'll be. Come check us out. We'll have a little DJ party there and get it set up, and we'll see you next time. In the name of the Darwin, the Dawkins, and the Christopher Hitchens, science bless you all. Poof! Poof.
Why she wanna leave me alone? Saying all I do is wrong. No rights when they been left turns. Playing that she gotta let it burn. Saying that the house not a home. Sunshine cause she heard it all before. Sometimes she don't wanna be alone. Most times she don't want me gone. She don't know I try my all. She don't know I sprung in the sun, but I'm going in the winter, so we good to the fall. Remember how I told you I get it and I win. Now I'm got it, you ain't answer my call. Wonder if I've been moving too strong. Maybe I just been moving too balls. Really hate when the feeling get lost. Nowadays she just dodge my calls. In the game throwing laws like Paul. Young legend Miss John like Wall. And I wish you never met like Carl. Dick game lay it down like law. Made plans but you canceled them all. I was just trying to splurge in the mall. Now I'm home stacking bread till you call.
It's time to roll. She tryna slide. We smoking Zah. Stop acting shy. Cause you a demon when I get between your thighs, girl. You like my rib, you know I need you by my side, girl. It's time to roll. She tryna ride. We smoking. Stop acting shy. Cause you a demon when I get between your thighs, girl. You like my rib, you know I need you by my my side, girl.
Be smoking that side. I'm trying to get high. She said that she not ready for love, stop wasting my time. I got demons in my closet, I can't hide. I did all my exes wrong, they wish I died. Damn, I tried. They won't believe me when I say this. Oh my God, what a blessing. Hello Phoenix, that's my twin. I told these hoes they won't get my heart again, not again. Cause they went missing when I needed just a friend.
They went missing, yeah, they always missing. They don't want no smoke, they hit the blunt and started tripping. My daughter about to be 5, I ain't got no time to be bitching. I'm still reminiscing, we ain't had no food in the kitchen. I gotta go and stack. I'm waiting, know I'm heading, but I'm going up. I hit the side, now your sack feel like I'm throwing up. And I just took another perk, cause one wasn't enough. Yeah.
It's time to roll. She tryna slide. We smoking some. Stop acting shy. Cause you a demon when I get between your thighs, girl. You like my rhythm, you know I need you by my side, girl. It's time to roll. She tryna ride. We smoking. Stop acting shy.